Hello and welcome to the world's first Paul Weller fan podcast. I'm Dan Jennings. This is the story of 66, a celebration of the brand new album from the legend that is singer, songwriter and musician Paul Weller. This new series features podcast conversations with many of the huge talents that have been involved in the creation of Paul's 17th solo studio album. What I hope is that these podcasts give you a deeper insight into the creation of the new LP and that sheer joy of the creative process. And ultimately, it all comes back to the songs. What you'll hear about this LP, probably more than any other, is an album packed full of collaboration. Welcome to the story of 66. So here we are, the final episode of our journey. Series 2 culminates in a very special episode of Black Barn Studio. We kicked off with the man himself, Paul Weller, a track-by-track journey through the new album. And we culminate with Charles Rees, the wizard, taking us through the LP and talking us through its creation. We're going to pull out some of those wonderful little moments, the backing vocals of Say She, Dr. Robert, Samadou Jaya-Faleka and Louise Marshall. You'll hear that utterly bonkers electric guitar from Steve Craddock and Josh McClory. Beautiful soundscapes from Le Super Armade. The recordings from Abbey Road with Britten Symphonia and Hannah Peel. You'll even hear acoustic guitar from Steve Brooks and lap steel from Richard Hawley. This is just incredible, honestly. Strap in, this is an amazing ride. Another journey through an incredible album. Let's get into it. Charles Rees. Thank you so much for joining me.
Pleasure, sir.
How are you?
Very good, thank you. Very good.
Hey, look, here we are, Black Barn Studios. I'll never get tired. Like, if we're still doing this in 10 years' time and I'm kind of popping in every week, remind me of this feeling right now, Charles, of being here at Black Barn for like only, my third, maybe fourth time, because this is an incredible experience coming in, man.
Oh, you will get tired of it, don't worry.
I'll tell you what I will get tired of is that road outside. What's going on with the potholes, man? The road down here is a lovely little lane in Ripley. You get to the studios. I mean, if this was Rod Stewart's studio, he'd be out there filling those in manually like he was, wouldn't he?
But, you know, down here, it's all forgotten about. It's just like another world. The local council just don't like us down here.
Potholes, honestly, unbelievable. They're massive.
It's an assault course on your car.
Yeah. You go fishing in the potholes around here, I'll tell you when it's raining. Look, here we are with The Wizard. We are a week away from release at the time of recording from the new album, Paul Weller, 66. And you obviously lived with this album for like 2-3 years in this case. And then it's delivered to the record company. So over the past kind of 5-6 months since you've done that, you step away from it, I guess, right?
Try to. There's always something pulling you back to it. Something that the label want, or Atmos mixes, or just maybe a radio edit, or anything, any excuse to sort of look back at it.
But it's not always, I guess it's that kind of space that you need because it's such an intense period creating an album, and particularly for you, the engineer as well, because you're kind of constantly playing it back for the mixes and the sound and that kind of to get to the perfect end result that you can send on to be mastered, right?
Yeah. I say there's always something. What it is every time we do any little thing to it, it seems to have a massive consequence. And it always leads to something else, and you never know what you're going to get by the end of it. But Paul's really good, though. By the time we've done, I don't know, like 50%, 60% of it, he knows exactly what he wants. If he thinks there's any doubt about anything, especially on this album, it's like, nah, get it out, remove it. Right. Which I've noticed this album's a lot sort of thinner than most. Fewer things, samples or anything like this. There's not really so much of that anymore. If it's clashing with something else or you can't hear something else, no, it's out. Something goes.
And there are still an awful lot of layers to a lot of the songs, and a lot of the songs that we're going to go through as well. Paul's playing so many instruments on them as well. So this is not an acoustic album of Paul playing guitar and that's it, which which when you say like we've simplified things, you might then expect that. It's like there's so much going on and so many levels and so many of the tracks.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard comparisons to True Meanings, but it is similar to that in respect of, it's not just Paul on his own, it's the band and there's gentler songs and things, but no, I don't know if this is particularly, some of the songs definitely started with acoustic. Thank you, Marco.
Refresh on the tea, coffee's arrived. Well done, Marco.
Do you want one?
No, I'm all right. I'm good, man.
I mean, if anything, what's the question again?
I can't remember. Noel Gallagher said to me that when Paul played him the album or sent him the album, Noel said to Paul, it's very laid back. And then Paul rang him and was like, To quote Noel Gallagher, what the fuck do you mean, boring? It is a laid-back album in parts, but there are other parts of the album where it's really uplifting and raucous and kind of, when it's turned up loud as it needs to be. Songs like Flying Fish and Soul Wandering and stuff.
Yeah, they are
incredible.
They are full on. There aren't many of those. There's definitely, a few quiet ones, but gentle ones on there. And then there are these epic ones, but they're not like in your face fast, or they're just intricate and, I don't know, beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm biased, but the ones that he did with Christophe Vaillant, is that how you pronounce it?
It's good enough.
Yeah, I'm never sure. They're amazing. And we'll obviously talk about them.
Well, we'll take a journey through the album as well. And like I say, this gap between the album being done and release is months and months and months, and very different to how it would have been, I say back in the day, but even when you were kind of starting working with Paul and stuff, you could get these albums out to market a lot quicker than you can do these days, right?
So how did it start off? More often than not, there'll be a band playing things relatively live and probably not too many overdubs. So I didn't really need much more than that, and then a bit of mixing. But Paul can write in the studio now if he wants. Nowadays, you can spend as long as you want in your own studio and do as many overdubs as you want. So the contrast is we probably record an awful lot more than we used to years ago. But then, particularly on this album, we spend a lot more time removing.
And it's also done over a period of time, obviously. So, very different to kind of the way back in the Jam days, maybe, where it would be, you're booking a studio, you're on the clock, you're recording stuff over the course of a week, and that's the album then done and dusted. Or, you still work in those kind of stints, though, right? You come down and work for a week like that. Paul come down and work for a week like
definitely, that. Definitely get the band down on some of the occasions very quickly. Say on this album, I can't remember the order of the songs that were recorded, but there was a point where I think probably prior to officially doing the album, Flying Fish, I think, might have been one of the first songs. But before that, I think we did Burnout, and that was just a live thing. That was a live take with the band. The band were down one day, and Paul just said, let's have a go.
And you weren't necessarily at that point thinking, I guess you were always thinking this might be us making an album, because that's kind of how Paul goes, right? Album tour kind of thing. But you weren't necessarily going, we're now in the studio, we're making 66, off we go. It's not that kind of mentality. It's just we're kind of making music and we see where it takes us, I guess.
Well, when we did Flying Fish, I think we thought this was like the start of something. It had to start somewhere. But prior to that, I don't think we had any particular start. But then I think Paul realised that with Flying Fish, and then let's just go through like doing a bunch of songs and see what happens. Later to which he's like going, we've got to start something here. And then actually not long after that, Flying Fish was put to one side. Wasn't going to be on the album.
Really?
Just for a bit. But this is sort of, we moved on. We'd progressed, I think, with songs like Ship of Fools, Sleepy Hollow. They were the early ones as well. And then when we got further down the line, Paul went, no, actually, you know what? I think we really do need that. We really need Flying Fish on it. We're just going to finish it, do whatever it is just to bring it up to the others.
Noel said that as well. I'm sorry, I'm not going to name drop Noel Gallagher in the entire conversation, because even though I am obviously clearly chuffed that he's been on. He talks about, obviously, the song they worked on, Jumble Queen, him kind of going, at one point going, I don't know where this fits on the album. I hear, because he was hearing other tracks that were coming through from Paul and that Paul was doing, maybe sharing with him, and he's going, I don't know where that fits on the LP. But I guess that's it, when you kind of have this collection of songs, and Paul's talked in the press about having about 20 songs at the end of this album. How you then turn that into an album that has flow, and is that a conversation you have together, or is that a Paul thing?
Paul's definitely on it, playing with the orders, writing these things down, and I don't understand it myself, because I think you can have different formats. Like you could have a gig format of an album, or you could do it, one side is completely different to the other.
Almost like Confessions, Style Council. You had that kind of classical side, and then you had the pop side. So you whichever way he wants to go down. I don't know. When he said doing a double or a triple album, I thought, okay, this is good, but we're going to be at this for an awful long time. And I can't remember how far down the line it was, but then eventually we had enough for it, with a few sort of extra I don't want to call them leftovers, because they're still really good tracks. But I think Paul realised that there's some things that are just, you got to commit to, like that gentle start. When he sort of said, right, Ship of Fools is going to be the one, I thought, wow, okay. So
But I think it sort of makes sense then if you're going to have a banger, Jungle Queen, like, whoa, that really hits hard, especially after something so gentle. People thinking, oh, this could be quite an acoustic album. And then it isn't.
Paul said to me about the fact that he still thinks of the order of these albums, like the side 1, side 2. He's still thinking in that kind of vinyl world, which is amazing. I mean, it's a really lovely thing, but also that's not quite often the reality of how people hear these albums now is through streaming services. Yeah. And even actually the CD world. I was listening to Heavy Soul the other day on vinyl again. I got back into the vinyl, as you know, and got it on vinyl again. And you realise like side 2, I think, starts with an instrumental. I'd listened to it so long as a CD, I'd never really kind of clocked that. But actually side 2 opens with this instrumental. And Heavy Soul Part 2, I think it is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Just what I mean? So it's like actually, but how he hears the album side 1, side 2 is quite very different to how actually the consumer hears things, but he doesn't give a shit about that, right? It's like, actually, this is how I'm creating music, it's this way.
But then, you think about Mirrorball, that track Mirrorball starting the album, just like insane. Absolutely mad. But that's the way it's set up. And after that, then I think the listeners left with this idea that I haven't got a clue what to expect after that.
Yeah, which is what you want. You want that kind of sense of surprise, and we're not comfortable in the making of a Paul Weller album. There's not a format, there's not a standard, there's not a kind of this is not. And I mean, as an audience, as us listening to it, you don't know what you're going to get, which I think is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, there isn't. There's no format to Paul at all. If anything, it's. And he's anti that. I think if he could surprise everybody every time, that would be his intention. Every album is going to be a surprise to the listener, I think, because, already people have heard about three or four of the songs now, I think, at this point. And this is obviously just before the album comes out. But I'm hoping that they will find one or two in there that will just, still blow them away.
We're not going to have time to talk about deluxe, the extras and all that kind of stuff. But I think what we end up with is something around, 16, 17 songs that are about to go out into the world from Weller. Yeah. And really eclectic, really different. And I guess it's that kind of model where Paul's always talks about the Beatles and kind of, what you got certainly towards the kind of latter part, the second half of the Beatles career, if you like. Every album was different, every single was different, but it's also that kind of Bowie model as well, where every sound, we're kind of constantly pushing forward. And the good thing about Paul is we haven't yet gone down the Tin Machine route, thank Christ. But I don't know, is he into the Tin Machine? I don't know.
I doubt it. I doubt it very much.
It's this wonderful thing of being a Paul Weller fan. I know you're a fan of the music that you're creating as well. You're in this, and you're loving what you're doing, but we don't know what to expect. So 66 is coming out. We don't know what to expect. The album opener, Ship of Fools, is something very different for an album opener from Paul, I think.
Yeah, beautiful start.
Really lovely. And you've got Jacko on flute. We've got Max Beasley. So let's talk about these two guys back in the band.
Omar was in recording here at the barn. I think the idea of Paul talking to Max, they were just on the phone one day, Max sort of just rang up. And they were just having a good old chinwag about stuff. And I've got a feeling that might have been part of the reason to get the old band back together again, because they all went to the same music college, I think, Jacko, Omar and Max. So there's a sort of an element of the three of them in the same room. It's great. Obviously, we'd had Omar for a little bit, in those days. But then it was really the return of Max then. Yeah. Just showing off how well he can play vibraphone and drums and everything, actually. He is such really a talent. I can't
wait for people to hear his own vocal album. I know he's got the kind of instrumental album, if you like. But the vocal album that Paul sings on and loads of other people sing on, because it's just, he's such a talent. In terms of Ship of Fools, one thing we wanted to do on this chat is break down a couple of these tracks as well. Is this one we can do?
We can.
Yeah.
Vibes. Loads of vibes in this track.
Oh, really? Great, yeah. So lots of vibes that you're layering up.
Yeah, we'll do little bits and then we'll sort of start off with, in fact, this one was played live, Paul playing acoustic guitar at the same time, I think. And Pilgrim, yep. Let's start off with the first bridge. It's a bit more going on.
Nice. So you're playing them how they're playing in the studio is in sections, and Paul will direct Max, or Max will come up with something, a bit of both?
I think Paul's got the song pretty much there. Can't say lyrically at this point, but if he's playing acoustic guitar and singing a guide at that point, then they will be playing to that. So there'd be some form of Max playing a live take, and then they'll probably embellish it after that. Jacko's definitely in the room at the time.
And we've got Jacko on flute and sax on this one.
Mm.
And there's Jacko's sax then coming to the top. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Max back in.
Isn't that wonderful, those kind of layered elements?
When you get the three of them in the room, Paul, Jacko and Max, it's really delicate. Every sort of nuance is there very early on within that evening, that session. That was an evening session, I think. It might actually have been a Sunday, because by the end of it, we'd done so much.
Right.
I couldn't tell you exactly what, but we definitely, this was done mainly in that one evening, which amazes me. And even, when we overdub bits on it, even the next day or whatever, it's so fluid when you have people like Jacko and Max in the room, because it's all lead. And even with Max playing chords, so he's got like 4 beaters in 2 hands and he's just playing chords. It still amazes me how he can do that. But that's his job. That's his speciality.
Well, you say that. I mean, he was obviously an incredible Hollywood actor as well. So,
Is he? Oh, yeah, he is. Yeah, sorry.
There's no end to his talent.
Yeah, no, he's great.
Bloody annoying. And he's bloody gorgeously good looking, isn't he? Annoying sod.
A little plug for the Midwich Cuckoos.
That was brilliant, actually. I loved a bit of that. Right, let's talk. This is one of those tracks I think I've spoken to you about before, where I don't know why, I got a bit obsessed with Paul Weller playing bass. Because whenever I see him, he's so cool. He looks so, like, the couple of videos on, like, Top of the Pops or whatever, I think he did Shout to the Top, or no, Long Hot Summer, and he just looks the dogs, but he's playing bass on this one, right?
I think so. I believe so. That sounds like Paul. It's his thumb. That's the sound of his thumb playing it. There you go.
Nice. All right, the Ship of Fools. Wonderful. You mentioned Flying Fish.
Yep.
This is, I always love it when Charles Reese gets a playing credit as well. This is one where do you know that you've got a playing credit on this one?
Oh, what is it? Not spoons.
It's not the whisk. It's drum programming and synthesizers on this.
Yeah. In the early days, yeah, a bit of programming there, and anything just to get it going in that first day. I think we just wanted something, and I can't even remember how we even got to that point. Very quickly, usually the quickest option is get a beat together, not difficult, with the drum machine, and then get something sequenced on it. Okay, that doesn't take long, and especially if you've got just a couple of keys to go with, maybe whatever the chords were. There are not many chords. Well, if I'm playing on it, there aren't many chords. That's for sure.
But the thing is, Ben is on drums for it. So Ben comes in later on.
Yeah.
But we don't remove you entirely. Ben's adding something, I would guess, the kind of drum roll at the start. I love the fact that kind of even, what now you would maybe refer to this as a demo, if you like, but even like the very early start of the creation of this song, we've still kept all those elements, or kept bits of those elements that you're building on stuff.
We did keep an awful lot of it. In fact, it got to the point whereby I think, because Christoph added some bits on that.
Remotely, I think, right?
Yeah. I sent him the track. He's always got some amazing synths. Whatever he's doing, wherever he's recording them.
Well, it's the Mini Moog, it's the Oberheim 2 voices, it's the Roland Juno 6. I mean, who knew that you needed this many?
I think we'll find the Roland Juno 206 may not have been used. I can't remember.
Oh,
we shall have a look in a moment. You'll prove me wrong in just a sec. There we go.
It's amazing. I mean, who needs this many synths? But Christoph obviously does.
Yeah,
his lounge must be chaos.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a feeling I don't think it's all in the box. I think he's got some of these keyboards. I just think he's clever enough to know that if you want to get a certain sound, you've really got to learn how to use that keyboard. You can't do it just as a plug-in or anything.
Yeah, right.
You can, but it's not to the same degree.
Let's talk Jungle Queen. So lyrics written by Noel Gallagher. Paul Weller on a million instruments on this. Moog guitar, the Hammond organ. We got him on backing vocals, bass, acoustic guitar, piano, electric guitar, and so on. There's these wonderful backing singers on this and on Soul Wandering, actually, which is Sumadou and Louise. And they just sound fantastic. But this is like a really big song on the album, a big uplifting song on the album. We've got the brass section that Steve Triggs created as well. So yeah, what do we want to isolate? Should we isolate some backing vocals?
Yeah, let's have a listen to them, the first chorus.
Take what you want. Take all that you want from me. Take what you want. Take all that you want from me.
And of course, not forgetting Tom, he's in there as well.
Take what you want. Take all that you want from me. Take what you want. Take all that you want from me.
A little plug for Tom as well.
The ladies talked about this being such a special place to come, Paul being so welcoming, but also he clearly knew what he wanted from this song and from Soul Wandering, like being quite directive in a sense, but experimental. But you guys kind of know what you want when people are coming into the studio. It's not time wasted. We're very quick in terms of what we're doing, right?
Yeah, I think when they came in, the idea, I think Paul had already given them sort of an idea, but when you hear them bouncing it off each other, it's different, you know. So if they decide to do it in unison or harmonise, you know, they'll instantly be able to tell Paul, show Paul that, and then Paul will go, yep, I want you to do that. But it's very quick. And they're only really on the choruses and the bridge.
When you're doing the song, you're not playing the song all the way through and then they're kind of doing their bits. You're doing them recording.
Yeah,
you're recording in sections.
Yeah, just so we know that that's working. Once that's fine, then they can do the other choruses or whatever. And then we did actually layer something up a little bit, but it was just too much. But the bridges, definitely, that was like we had to come back to those just so it was just sweet enough because it needed a little bit more build or something on there. And I think, it was took a few goes, but they're really quick. The girls that worked so quick.
I talked to Trig, I talked to Dave on the podcast, and we had a lot of discussion about the piccolo trumpet. Nice.
And then you have the second bridge, which is the longer bridge.
At what point in the recording process and the creation of that song will you go, actually, what this now needs is brass? And then, because obviously not every song has brass on it, right? But there's a moment in the recording, the creation of Jumble Queen, where you go, actually, what we need the general.
Paul's just like, this would be a great idea. And then he will probably put down a rough idea of what he wants as a vocal.
In what sense? What, him kind of going...
or just larring, or even maybe sort of not quite a lyrical thing, but it will just be anything that inspires him. The first thing that he's probably able to get off quickly enough without overthinking it.
Next song on the album is called Nothing, which has now got the G in. When I first noticed this here at Black Barn on the board here, there was no G.
I don't know why. I just think it sounded good without the G.
Yeah, nothing apostrophe.
Yeah, nothing. Not nothing, but nothing.
Nothing. But yeah, there's now a G back on it. This is another one of those ones where so much of this track is just created in the studio, right? And it's Paul kind of layering up again. We've got lead vocal, electric guitars, acoustic, bass, Rhodes. We'll come back to the Selena. I want to ask about that. Piano. So much of when you're creating the songs in the studio, Paul can play like everything pretty much, right? So a lot of the things he's able to do, and you're tinkering around together in the studio all day long, just the two of you, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it's anything. They're all there, available. The instruments are out. Anything could happen. I mean, usually the acoustic or the piano is the first thing to go down, or even just a demo or something.
I love the story behind this song as well. The story of the lyrics coming from Suggs's mate, Chalky.
Yeah. I didn't really get into the... he didn't tell me for a while where they came from. And then one day, I think he was talking actually with Suggs. We were doing something, probably Who Do You Think You Are? Something maybe around that time. But and I went, really? Oh, wow, that is such a cool story. And after that, I thought, it seems to make sense, coming from somebody who's got nothing, apparently. So it's true.
This bit halfway through, there's like this instrumental break on this song, about 2 minutes 20 in. And we'll talk about, I don't know whether this always existed, this is always there, and actually the same is true on Jumble Queen, actually, giving songs the space at times where you go, actually, we're not going to put the layer on, we're going to take a break here, and you hear the instrumental section of the song is really lovely. I think Noel had said to Paul on Jumble Queen, because Paul was like, what goes in this bit? And Noel was like, no, just leave it, let it breathe. And you do the same here on Nothing as well, this kind of instrumental break that comes in halfway through. So what's that fuzzy instrument there?
That is...
There's Steve Brown on Moog, who's big producer guy, Corinne Bailey-Ray's now husband as well.
Yeah, I think we've been doing something with Corinne and Paul. Were working on some music together. And Paul asked him, and he went, yeah. And we had a Moog over there in the corner, a Moog Voyager, and he knew exactly what he wanted to do. Clever guy, just knows how to get into the synth and just make it sound really sweet. Can't remember, I think we did 2 takes on this. But let me just check. Hang on. No, 1.
1 take.
Yeah. It was obvious what I think he wanted to do. And he's so fluid, again, natural on the keys.
Okay. I mean, there's a reason we don't hear Moog albums on their own, right? But as an instrument, as an instrument with other things,
unless it's something like the clangers or whatever.
Yeah. As an instrument with other things, it's a beautiful thing. But I love the fact on these songs, Paul's going, what I hear on this is it's lacking a bit of Moog. Let's get it on. That's brilliant. I love it. Let's talk about the Selena. So this was an instrument that Paul and I talked about when we talked about this track, and Paul said, what do you want to know about the Selena? And all I know is it's kind of like a synth, but it replicates strings. Is that right?
Yeah. So originally it was just a home organ. Initially made by a company in the Netherlands called Eminent. So many bands like Genesis and all those bands in the 70s, they were taking these massive organs out on the road and they just wanted to use the string section of it. So they did that. They made this literally just one little keyboard, just with a few controls, and it did this one sound, and it did it fantastic. Everybody was really happy in the old days because they didn't have to lug around this massive organ just for this one sound. You know, it may not sound like it, but Jean-Michel Jarre, when he did Oxygen, is one of the main sounds is actually not the Selena string machine, but the organ itself with that string sound going through like a phaser and delay.
Okay, well, the whole do-do-do-do-do, that song.
Yeah, it's more of a melodic, melodic, I can't actually remember without hearing it again, but I remember him showing it.
It's a part of that,
video.
Right.
Yeah. But the actual Selena string machine is just a small keyboard with some beautiful sounds that you usually have to enhance somewhat because it's quite a thin sound.
That's lovely, isn't it?
It's very simple. It'd be nice to play it to you with a bit of context, if that's all right. Oh, do you know what? One more time, but this time with the Rhodes.
That's Nothing, which is one of these releases, these pre-releases, I suppose, for the album these days. Are these singles? Are they impact tracks or whatever these things are? But we get a sneak preview, which is always lovely. As of the time of recording, people won't have heard My Best Friend's Coat at all. So Paul hasn't played this acoustically on anything. He hasn't played this live anywhere. There's been no preview of this whatsoever. And what this is a song created with Le Super en Mode, Christophe Vaillant, who is playing a load of instruments. Christophe gave us the story of this song and the fact that him and Paul wanted to write something together and that he'd shared this backing track, I suppose. And it's really simple because we've got all of Christophe's stuff there. We've got a bit of drums from Ben, Paul on lead vocal, and then we'll come back to the orchestra that's been added as well. But what is it you get when Christophe sends over the stuff for you to work with? We're getting what are called stems, I guess, the kind of layers, right?
Yeah. I mean, with Christophe, it's almost finished. All the music is there. And except for maybe a few things that Paul may want to put on top, like a piano. And then we're not just replacing, we may alter a few bits, but a great deal of it is already arranged.
That's a dream to work with that, isn't it?
Yeah, so with Christophe, he's got this dense sound to the music, and there's so many intricate parts in there that it seems a shame just to sort of remove bits and then replace bits with something different unless there's a good reason. In this case, what we'd always do with Christoph stuff is get Ben down, play the drums, because we just wanted to get a little bit of better sound and maybe a little jet change in the groove, but just something a little bit more rich. No offence, Christoph. With Ben on it, I think it thickens it up a little bit.
Now, what we also get, this is the first track on the album with the Britain's Symphonia. So this is Hannah Peel arrangements. This is Abbey Road. So you got to go to Abbey Road again?
Oh, yeah. That was a great day, actually. Great day. And one of those places where everybody just turns into a fan. We're just like,
everybody talks about it. It does sound a bit like this is just a kind of Jolly Boys outing, quite frankly.
Yeah, I guess it is. Although some of us had to work.
I was going to say, you're spending, you and Paul are obviously focused on the work, and Hannah, and the orchestra, but the rest of them are having a bit of a jolly.
Yeah. There was quite a few of us in that room, in the control room that day. I'll tell you, it was good fun, really good fun, and it was so good for some of the people, like the band, to be there, label, just to sort of witness really this whole thing just in front of them unfold. It didn't take that long either. I think Hannah's great. She's so efficient in what she does with the orchestra. But for this, we gave ourselves 2 lots of 3-hour sessions, and every time we did it in 2 hours. So it's like we had that hour left over. And while everybody else went and enjoyed themselves getting the Abbey Road tour, I was left working and trying to get this thing done, because it's really good. It was amazing. Absolutely fascinating, the session. Not many takes on each song at all. Hannah's detail, again, attention to detail, is that every tiny little thing is always changeable if you want it, and she can change it so quickly. She communicates with the orchestra perfectly and so fast. I think it's time to play you something. This is some of Christoph's stuff. So that's a Casio and a vibraphone that he's given us. And then later on in the song, you hear things like harpsichord and the Selena string machine as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the Selena we kept in with the orchestra because it's a beautiful sound. Beautiful. So Christoph's acoustic guitars that he played along with Hannah. And this bit coming up is beautiful. Gives you an idea anyway. Beautiful sounds there that he's put up along with the strings. They complement each other.
Paul talks about Christoph's sense of or French sense of melody, I think was how he put it, and you can really hear that there, can't you? And in the whole song, obviously, but certainly when you isolate it in that way,
feel like I'm back in Paris.
Yeah, absolutely,
definitely.
I need my Style Council Mac on. Now let's talk Rise Up Singing. And Rise Up Singing, we're going to get your son Marco in on the picture here in a second, because he plays on this. And what are we calling it? A reversioning, I suppose, from the Monks Road Social version, which was the original.
Paul said, didn't he, that he just felt it just didn't get a fair show first time round. And it was definitely it's a great idea to put it on the album. Also, it meant that he could make it different enough, because the original version contained some samples. It would be better not to use samples on this album at all if we could help it. No clearance and all that sort of malarkey. But what happened was a great track turned into this epic track, especially thanks to Hannah Peel.
The strings really add to it, don't they? And I mean, obviously, I think on the original we would have had the brass, right? You've not added that.
Yeah, that went the boys, Trig and Co. I know when we did it, they only had to do a little bit. They didn't have to do much at all. It's just the same thing, repeating. That's all it is.
So in terms of the rebuild of this track, so what we added was strings primarily, and then, like you say, removing some of the samples, turning them into kind of real instruments, I guess.
It's such a beautiful style that we've got to put it all together, I think. There's the string section as such, cellos, violas, beautiful, but also there's a harp in there as well. And the harp is just magical on this, especially when you see it actually written down in notation. It's all over, up and down. It's beautiful. The music came from Robert, most of the music, the band, and Paul enhanced that, bit of piano, bit of guitar, then thought, get the brass down. I think once the brass section was on, that made it. That completely made it.
It's such a brilliantly joyous track, this. I love it. I mean, I love the original, and you're right, Hannah's strings bring even more to the mix of this.
I mean, when you listen to the original samples as such, it makes sense to put strings and try and replace that. It's quite glassy sounding originally. That's the best way to explain it. And try to sort of remove that and just replace it with something a little bit warmer, a bit richer, a bit more dynamic as well. That was the thing. That's all right, a bit later on, because it's nice to hear it with the brass as well, give you an idea of all together. There you go.
We also in this one, so we got Dr. Robert on backing vocals with Leah Weller.
So I'll give you a little bit of that. So here's Robert.
Rise up,
Leah.
rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up, rise.
A little flavour there. It's beautiful.
There's a version of the song just with that alone, isn't there? I mean, that's beautiful.
There, remix with it.
Yeah. I mean, if I had any talent whatsoever, I'd be asking you to email me these stems so I can play with these tonight. I mean, I hope, anybody listening now will be like inspired and be like, hold on, I need to get hold of this. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's so lovely. Getting those, actually, that's the only thing that remained from Robert of his original session.
We'll talk to Marco. Let's bring Marco in on this as well. So, Marco Rees, your son, on electric guitar.
Yeah, this was well, I don't want to do too much talking, actually.
No, let's bring Marco over. We've had enough of you, Charles. Oh, so one thing I should have asked about Charles. So this came up on the podcast conversations. Where's the little bell? So there's a little bell in this studio, apparently. That
you know the one.
That Hannah brought in. Is it Hannah? Hannah Weller brought this, or Hannah Peel? Which Hannah?
I don't even know. I'm imagining it would be Hannah Weller.
Is this the bell to quieten you up, isn't it? Is it? So this is the Charles Rees, the Wizard Bell, which I think I've heard, I can't remember who said this on the podcast, that Hannah Weller bought this. And what happens, so this gets rung when you've been talking for too long, is that right?
If that's what other people are saying. Who said that?
That's what I heard.
Right, let me at them. No, I don't know how it all came about. You are actually asking the wrong person.
I heard this was, I need to get hold of Hannah. I heard this was the Charles Rees Bell. So let's swap seats now. So you've had your say, we've rung the bell.
Right, okay.
Marco.
Oi, oi.
Nice. So we keep popping up. There's little bits of little flavours of Marco throughout this track. This is your first credit on a Paul Weller album, Marco. How does this feel?
I'd say it's my first, but I believe there's probably been a second time.
Oh, really? You've been on it something before, but not did Charles take the credit?
Yeah, he probably actually. He likes doing that.
Well, you the player of the whisk. Maybe that was it. Maybe that's the true story. So, I mean, obviously, Dad's had this job, this gig for a while, working with Paul Weller. You've grown up on this music.
Yeah.
Big fan?
You could say so, actually. Just got into it, got brought into it in a way. Sort of started coming down here, like rehearsals, and just hearing the music again, not realising how good it was. Just got introduced to it, I suppose, quite late.
And for you, the guitar is the instrument of choice.
Yeah. It was drums, and I think that's probably the other little cameo, I suppose, in another song or something. But no, it's Mainly guitar, yeah.
So Dad plays a bunch of instruments as well. Is he teaching you, or have you gone?
No.
I love this proper kind of dad something. What am I going to learn from him?
Exactly, yeah. Nothing good. No, I'm joking.
Right, I'll get my coat.
Please.
Where's the bell? It's time to stop over. How did that come about? Can you remember how that came about in terms of your bit on that song? And you were kind of just noodling around in the studio, I'm guessing.
Paul just asked for a guitar at the time. And just asked, could I tune it up? Because Roger wasn't there. So I was a little tech for a bit. Sat down, started playing some bits over the track. Sort of just came together and then cut some bits in between. No.
Just to try to find a sound.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
We're trying to discover a sound, and you were just playing through some ideas of sound.
Yeah.
There's a little wah-wah pedal going on, right?
Literally just that, yeah.
Nice. I love the fact that this can then end up in an album, though. That's crazy, right? Because it's
we record everything down here. Everything. You know, every time you hear the music, something's probably being recorded.
Well, there we are. Look, there's Marco Rees. His podcast debut. He'll be back here in 10 years' time when we're still going, because he'll be replacing Craddock, no doubt.
Oh, don't say that, honestly.
It's gonna happen.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. Hope so.
One day. Thank you, Marco.
Thank
Cheers,
you,
man.
yeah.
Next song on the album. Actually, this is one on the way down here. I was listening to the LP again, and I played this like 2, 3, 4, 5 times back to back. I kept going back to the beginning because it seems like such a simple song, and but it goes in so many different directions, and it's actually, there's a lot of complexity to it, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, for a song that's really built around an acoustic guitar and a vocal, that's it. But actually, in an arrangement, it's an absolute grower, this.
And it does go off at different directions. It kind of take that kind of introduction of the I Woke Up section, but then it goes off at a different tangent halfway through. It's a really kind of intricate, there's just a lot going on in it, but in a very, very clever way. And I heard him play this in Liverpool. So just before Christmas, he did the gig with Steve Brooks. It was just the two of them, a couple of acoustic guitars, and it works on that level so brilliantly. But then actually when you start layering up, and we've got what we're going to talk about here, we've got Richard Hawley on the lap steel guitar, we've got Steve Brooks on acoustic, we've got the Britten Symphonia, so Hannah Peel's arrangements again back in. You're adding all this, but it works on both levels. This literally could be a Paul Weller Days of Speed. It's him and an acoustic guitar. He takes us out on the road kind of thing. And then when you hear on the album, it's much, much more. And I love those kind of songs. It's a great song. It just works where it's just Paul on his own acoustic guitar, but it also works when you kind of layer it up as well. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Perfect, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can hear for everything on the record, particularly this song, so clearly, because there's hardly anything else on it. You know, it literally is, apart from when you get to the drums and it's massive. But there's certain bits I think they may get a little bit missed, which is Richard Hawley's lap steel. He really went to town on that one.
Did this remotely? Right?
Yeah, he did it at his studio and layered it up, and there's probably about 7 takes that he's combined. It just gives you this wonderful sound.
Oh, wow. Isn't that great?
Yeah. You'd think, it's just a lap steel guitar. It's not. It's an arrangement in itself.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? And would Hannah have heard that then for the strings? Would you have given that to her maybe in advance and gone, because the strings play on, the strings play on Steve Brooks's guitar. That's right, yeah. So the strings actually are a version of what he's doing. But as I'm listening to that, am I hearing Steve Brooks in one ear and Richard Hawley in the other ear? Are they layered up in that way?
In the mix, it's Paul mainly, and then Steve off. Paul one side, Steve to the other side.
And then when Richard comes in,
he's all over. He's all over
right.
with all these guitars. It's quite a stereo thing. But you know what? I don't think Hannah actually heard this at first with Richard's stuff. I remember it was at that time that Richard was doing, the guitars for it.
How are you deciding, you and Paul? I guess you're testing everything. You're hearing, okay, what does it sound like with Steve Brooks full in the mix and Richard Hawley to the left, and vice versa, whatever? Or actually, was it always like, this is what it's going to sound like?
It was always going to be, but where Paul was driving, the song is just around Paul's guitar. That's it. It was always there. And then Steve comes in every now and again, plays bits and plays more as the song progresses, to the point whereby it's so melodic that you hear every now and again that Hannah's sort of following that. I think when Steve Brooks heard it for the first time, he was like, oh yeah. I think he was quite chuffed, Hannah following him. I find that bit actually.
I woke up.
Oh, you ruined it now.
Oh, sorry. So I can resist. I love that song. I think it's a really terrific song. Let's talk A Glimpse of You, another one created with Le Super Armand. And again, he's doing so much on this. You know, we've got acoustic guitar, bass, piano, percussion, mini moog, etc., etc. Again, a lot of complexity to a song, but the important thing was you hear all those elements. That was kind of like the ethos of this LP, really, wasn't it, in the sense?
Yeah.
If it was going to be there, it couldn't be hidden in the mix. And Steve Brooks talked about this actually in the track that he was involved in, we just talked about. He liked the fact that you could hear it all. Stuff wasn't buried. It wasn't too busy, I think was how he put it.
Put it this way, if you hear something that you really like, but you can just barely hear it, great, fantastic. But if you're not sure what it's doing, I don't see any point in it, or that's what Paul was thinking. It's like, well, I can't really tell.
So on this album, it was more a case of taking things out then, right?
Yeah,
if we were to look at your full kind of layers here, this full Pro Tools as we are, at one point there'd have been more stuff there, but you've basically been turning things off and going, actually, we don't need that, strip it back type thing, right?
Often we'd have instruments that would initially sound great because we hadn't overdubbed a huge amount. But then when it came to, I can't say for the string side of things, but with Christoph stuff, it all just sounded fantastic, everything. I don't think there was much we took out other than what Hannah replaced. So in essence, this one is, again, an intricate song. There's a huge amount going on in it. But because the strings, the orchestra just sound amazing, it's so easy to fit everything else in to that.
Can I ask you about the Paul vocal on this? Paul and I talked about this, and I don't really know how I really described it. I feel like it was probably pretty clumsy, and I don't know if I've got a better way of describing it now. But it's basically what I would describe as Paul singing over the top of himself. And he is credited on the album, like, you know, lead vocals and backing vocals. But there's this section, I guess, almost midway through. Yeah, he's singing against himself, I think was how I described it. And like I say, I haven't yet thought of a better way to describe it, so I'm going to stick with that.
Whoa. For a glimpse of you. Whoa.
I see what you mean now.
Just to confirm then, this is not me talking bollocks. That's a good way of describing it.
No, it all makes sense. I have to pause it there because the best bit is coming up.
Okay. Which order would you do that in? Because obviously Paul can't sing over himself at the same time, right? So he hasn't yet got that skill. Which bit would come first in that mix?
Well, you're really asking now, aren't you? Yeah. Right. So Paul's got a master plan where he thinks it's probably good to just sing over himself, but at some point he's got to stop. He'll sing the line, and then at the very end of the line, he won't sing that. And then he'll start to sing the chorus. So as we're going through this section, he didn't sing the last line, and we put that on another track later on.
Right, okay.
Of You wouldn't have been there. So it would be this.
I see, okay.
It was thought about as an arrangement for him when he was singing.
Really like the voice as an instrument in that way, though.
He would always think with backing vocals or double tracking in mind. He often thinks like that. But sometimes to go over and sing over yourself, it's not often, because it could be somebody else singing the chorus. He could have got some backing singers to sing the chorus, but it's just him. All of this song is just him. We'll say that, there's Christoph sang some amazing BVs on this as well. Yeah, just beautiful. Probably worth putting it in with the strings so you really get to hear what the orchestra are doing, because this moment is magical.
Wow.
Beautiful.
We talk so much on this podcast about Paul being an incredible singer an incredible lyricist. You know, those words right from day one, from In the City, let's be honest, right the way through to now, means so much to so many of us, right? We don't often talk about what I would call like the musicianship, I suppose. I guess there's been a bit of it, of like how he sees things and layers and colours and all that kind of thing. But actually, so much of that stuff, you could strip away the Paul Weller vocals on these songs. And as you were playing just that little bit there, you were kind of drifting. We were all drifting away, really, weren't we? Well, I know Christoph's obviously involved in this one and has created a lot of that sound as well. But so much of this album, and we did get this on one of the albums. Was it a Kind Revolution? We got instrumental versions. There was CD3. We got instrumental versions of the whole thing. Right? Okay. But this is one of those albums, again, where I think if you would take the Paul vocals out,
instrumentals always, I think almost all songs, when they're instrumental, it's just a different way to listen, isn't it? It's beautiful to be able to hear things that you wouldn't have thought were there. It uncovers more, doesn't it, when you listen to an instrumental? But for most people, they don't want to listen to an instrumental. It's just like, no, I want a song.
Yeah.
I just want the song.
Yeah.
But when we have to put the instrumentals down of all the songs, it's great. It's a moment where we'll probably never hear them again. So it's like, make the most of that moment. But hopefully then, you know, every now and again, if you hear something in a film one day, then you may hear an instrumental version of it. Like there's a little bit going on in that Without Sin, isn't it? With Burnout. Yeah. So you hear a bit more of the music than you did the vocal. But that's beautiful when you get a chance to hear an instrumental. But again, it only makes sense really if you know the song. Great, yeah, you sort of enjoy it more. But if you just hear it as an instrumental, you may just switch off. At this point, it's magical. It always gave me goosebumps listening to that middle eight. Just reminds me of like a James Bond moment as well. It's it's like, wow, where did this come from? It's like out of nowhere, it just goes into this. Oh no, that's just a beautiful section.
I think what's really great about this as well, and Christoph talks about the fact he was creating these music landscapes, if you like.
Yeah.
Soundscapes, so. Right? And,
very much so.
But then Paul was able to go, I'm now going to write lyrics around that. It's obviously not the norm. The norm is him having an acoustic guitar in his kitchen by the sounds of things, like strumming out a tune, whatever.
Yeah.
But actually what you're getting is a kind of, you know, a music bed, if you like, that you're playing with.
Isn't that an inspiration enough, really, to write to? I mean, if you got something like this, I'm sure just listening to the music alone, you can picture so many different things. Best Friend's Coat was definitely Paris for me. But for this one, I remember hearing it the first time and being amazed at this structure. It didn't quite gel with me the first couple of listens. And then I worked out that, I know exactly what's going on now. And I think when I was listening the first time I heard it, I wasn't sure where the bridge would come in, where exactly, you know, it felt as if it was coming in like a bit later or something. Hearing it now, it's like, oh, this is the bridge, this is the chorus. But on that first listen, it was like, wow, this is just complicated, but not overly complicated. But I guess with Christoph stuff, he really, really knows where the best chords fit. And out of the blue, there'll be something completely different. And you get it with Paul and you get it with a lot of other people. But in this case, bearing in mind that a lot of the orchestration had already been written anyway for it, it was finished. Apart from putting drums and maybe, the vocals on, it was finished. And then Hannah.
I was going to say that's a remarkable thing because there are very few albums, actually, in your entire time working with Paul, very few songs rather, whereby you would come into a studio with Paul for him to record his vocal to a sound that's kind of already there, to instrumentations that's already there. So when you come into the studio that day, actually you're loading up Christoph's stuff into the computer and whatever, and then playing it through, and then Paul singing over the top.
Yeah. So initially, I think before Paul's obviously heard this, but it's the first time I've heard it. So I'm sort of thinking, well, what is the balance? Where's the balance? And it's pretty straightforward with Christoph. You know, you don't want to hear anything like exceptionally loud. It's quite a natural balance. But then I sort of found with this one that once, I think obviously Paul had sung it, we were losing certain bits and just didn't really want to drop anything out of this one. Now, what's that instrument? Bear with us. It might be the style of it. Yeah, I love this instrument.
So what's that, the stylophone?
That's the stylophone, yeah. With loads of reverb on it.
But you're discussing with Paul and deciding together, like all these instruments, there are loads that Christoph's playing, where that fits in the mix. So how much one instrument's louder than the other and all that, and you're playing with what he's shared with you.
It very much depends on how complicated the string arrangement is. In this song, it is complicated. Yeah, so this one's got as well as a string section on it, it's also got a horn section on this one with bass trombones. Bear with us just for a moment.
Yeah. Oh,
I want to find I've got the orchestration.
Oh, cool. I should explain what's going on here, folks, right? So at that moment, Charles has gone into a cupboard in the studio and gone and got the actual arrangement from the Abbey Road session, right? So this is everything that Hannah created, written out. We're now looking at, oh my God. I mean, this is ridiculous. 3 years ago, I created this podcast. It was a daft idea in my kid's bedroom. And here we are at Black Barn Studio looking at the arrangements for the new album. I mean, this doesn't happen. This is utterly ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful to be able to break things down in such a way that if anybody's interested to listen to all of this, but actually
but you can read the music. You can read the music, right?
A little bit. I'm not great at it, but I can follow it because this one had horn section as well as strings. So strings being violins, violas and cellos, and sometimes double bass. Not on this one, I believe. But yeah, there were 3 horns and 2 bass trombones. And when they're all put together, it's such a fantastic sound. I was just amazed. Again, hardly any takes on this one. Just when you put them all together, it's just this huge sound, massive sound. But we didn't record those together. We recorded them separately. It's so beautiful, but just wanted to make sure we get the best opportunity to get a best balance possible.
As a guy who spent the majority of his life in studios, this is why he doesn't have any tan whatsoever, folks, right? He's just in it 24/7. Abbey Road as a studio, where does it rate in terms of the technicality, so forget all the history and the kind of specialness and that's kind of seeps in the walls. But actually, as a technical studio, is it a good space for it? Or
yeah. Right. I mean, some people could say, I prefer the sound of blah, blah, blah studio. As far as I know, Abbey Road has set the standard from day one. You could get better than that technically, say in studios in America, or there are other studios like Air Studios is exceptionally high standard. But Abbey Road seem to be doing more than most studios. They're responsible for so many plugins, electronic computer things, versions of microphones that were vintage and now they're part of the actual equipment being manufactured again. So Abbey Road was all about EMI. As a production company, as a manufacturing company, they would make all of the equipment for Abbey Road. So the standard had to be high. And in those days, there wasn't this quantity of equipment. You didn't have multi-track recording. It started off as mono, then stereo if you're lucky. But the standard is high and it still remains high.
Yeah, and so this is not a nostalgia trip. We're not going to Abbey Road because the Beatles connection. Paul loves the Beatles. There's probably a little element of that.
Oh,
right?
definitely, yeah.
But actually, this is a great place to record these big orchestras in this way.
Yeah. We didn't even use the big room. Studio 1 is the main room where you get the 110, 120 piece orchestras and choir at the same time, and some amazing films recorded there. Studio 2 is more compact, but it's still a huge sound. And you think of the Beatles, and a lot of the time you don't actually think of the sound of the room because the Beatles tend to make, they were responsible for some unique orchestral sounds, recording very close up, as close as is possible. So up front that you think, this is like Eleanor Rigby, how would you normally get that sound? But yeah, it's just a wonderful sounding room with fantastic staff. The staff there are they're at the top of their game, I think. I don't know where else you'd want to work after working at Abbey Road. Yeah. Apart from every other decent studio around the world, maybe. But, Abbey Road is the go-to place. But there also aren't many proper studios left in this country either.
But that's the one that everybody's aiming for, right? So look, the intention of our podcast here today was not to take you through every single track of the album, right? And every single layers, although we've done an awful lot of that. So this is just amazing, right? I'm going to move on to Soul Wandering in a second, which is such a massive, big track. And I understand one of the final songs recorded for the album. So we'll talk about that in a bit. What you've also got is Sleepy Hollow, this beautiful, beautiful song, which has Max and Jacko back again, these wonderful backing vocals with the band, Tom, Steve Pilgrim, Jake Fletcher, the newbie, if you like, as part of Sleepy Hollow, and this beautiful song. In Full Flight, Tom Doyle and Ant, so White Label, creating this again in a similar way to Christoph, creating this backing track, I guess, in a way.
Yeah.
And again, you get the same things from those guys in terms of the layered files, the stems, if you like, I would assume.
Very much so. Very much. It's all together. Where it came from originally, it may have been an idea that Paul had given Tom, either as like something recorded on his iPhone. I actually can't remember.
But they're going back and forth without you, so you're not even in the loop for a lot of stuff, right?
Initially, just from what I understand, Tom doesn't need much to work from. He's quite happy with the less, so then he can manipulate that. Like he does, he manipulates Paul's voice to get this vocal that never existed in the past, but now it does, which then turns into something that, say, she can work off. Usually it's an atmosphere that, if it sounds atmospheric, there's a little bit of vagueness to it, then that's great because you can work off that. You don't have to copy it 100%.
I imagine you and Paul are here and it's a brainstorm. If we were in a corporate world, there'd be a whiteboard, mark a pen, and you in the middle it would be circled backing vocals or something like that, and then you'd have this spider graph of it where you'd have all names in a box of who you're thinking could do these backing vocals, and say she would have been one of them, but there'd have been others. Is this how it happens? Is there's this kind of big brainstorm of who's going to do backing vocals? Who do we bring in to replace those parts, Charles? Or
no, I don't know. I honestly, Paul's got all his ideas, and there's a lot that he keeps up in his head until such point goes, do you know what? And often it will be just like a chance meeting with somebody, accident. There's a friend of ours, Mark Pate. He's introduced us to so many people along the way, and Paul might just think, hey, I don't know how they actually met and how Paul thought about this, but Paul's usually got an idea. If he's heard something he likes, very quickly he'll want to do something about it. But that's not really an answer to your question. No, I don't.
Well, there's no whiteboard with the brainstorming going on, and as I say, which is what you'd kind of expect in a corporate. Well, you can come up with ideas without that mechanism, folks. That's the thing. So here we have on this song a rare appearance from Steve Craddock, who's on electric guitar. But yeah, the backing vocals to Say She. I just wanted to pick these out because I think this is lovely.
It's a weird process for the girls to try to work out what they're going to do based off maybe some sketchy backing vocal ideas that Tom would have come up with, sort of almost synthesizing Paul's voice. I think it all came about from...
Isn't that brilliant? Because I think also that came from, I'm rightly talking to Tom, that came from like a voice note. There was just a little bit of Paul singing a melody or something in a voice note up to Tom, like over your mobile phone sending on. And then, as that song develops, what we're ending up with is Say She doing the full version. I mean, that's just wonderful, isn't it?
It's mad. I mean, to think that it's a large part of this whole song, just that sort of...
Yeah, that tiny melody. Little motif, in a way, and becomes the kind of fabric of the entire track.
And there's another bit. Midnight High. The song actually, I think, may have been... Yes, it was called that originally, and then got changed to In Full Flight.
And I think Paul talks about this took a while for him to... He loved the backing track. It took him a while to find the lyrics, find the purpose for the song and where it would fit and stuff. But it's brilliant that it kind of, evolves over time, but it needs to germinate almost in a way, doesn't it? It needs to kind of find its place and then here we are a few years later, and it's a key track on 66.
Yeah. I mean, when something comes from Tom, you don't know what to expect. Really is. It's the most different sounding music. What was that track he did on the last album?
Glad Times.
When we got that, it sounded nothing like sort of the version that you hear. It was similar, but I think there's something about it that I can't. The first time I hear any of his songs, I'm like, I don't quite get that. And then 2 or 3 listens later, I'm like, which is fascinating. When you hear somebody else's stuff, it's so different to Paul's, but then it gets sort of woven back into Paul's record and suddenly it's like a Paul song.
Yeah, exactly. But it's also that thing of how you then, again, Paul's writing the lyrics to this backing track, which doesn't, in a way, the backing track doesn't sound like a song. It doesn't have that kind of structure of a poppy melody of, something that you could easily write against, I don't think.
Well, sometimes like avant-garde or something a little bit strange that, creeps in. But I don't know. I think generally that when Paul's sort of working with somebody else, it's not that they're complete opposite, but you do need that completely different thing to then change Paul's sort of thinking about a song. I swear, if you give a song that Paul's done and you give it to somebody to remix, it's so inspiring and it makes you think, oh, you know what, we could have another go at that. You know, I don't know if that's something that would happen one day or not, but essentially I think with Monk's Road Social, I think that is a good case for it. You know, you hear something going, that's good. And you think, you know what? It's inspired me to make it different. Yes.
Say Shishi were here in the studio as well, so coming all the way down to Black Barn for this.
Yeah. That was a couple of hours working with them, but madness in a way, a little bit of vocal madness, because when you get three people all singing at each other, trying to work an arrangement out and trying to work out who's going to do this and who's going to do that, and you think you just got to let them do it. It's like you can't really interfere that much with it. You can't say, oh no, well, can you just do the harmony or something like that? You think, I don't know what they're talking about. they're talking this other sort of language. Whenever I work with backing singers, their job, it's a bit like working with brass. They've got all of these things that they can do. There's so much potential, but they've got their own little language behind it. And I know, sometimes I look at Paul like, what are they talking about? What's going on here? Oh, no, we'll be fine in a minute. We're fine. We'll sort it out. All right, okay.
Well, another two who are exactly like that, I know, because they told me, is Louise Marshall and Samadou Jayafaleka. And they're on Soul Wandering, which is, I think, was the first single from the album. Right?
Yeah.
And this is so big. Or was it an Impact track? Can't remember. It's so big. It's such a terrific song played loud. And again, it's one that works on an acoustic guitar. I've not heard Paul just play it as an acoustic guitar. I heard Tom do a version, just him solo on acoustic guitar.
Really?
And it sounded great. So again, it strips right back. It's perfect. But this is such a big, big song. And the last one recorded for the album, I gather.
I believe so. It's a strange one because it started acoustically, but it definitely had a sort of a thin feel to it. Not like it's really like big chords or anything. This one was quite a tough one because sonically speaking, it was tough. As far as like lyrical, it's really powerful, but because it's around acoustic, you want it to be really massive, but you can't because it's acoustic guitar. You just don't really have massive acoustic guitars. Electric guitars always sound bigger, brighter, but then Paul wanted some small sounds on this.
It's funny because I saw him do this on Jules Holland. And I've seen him do it on the tour. So I saw the Shepherd's Bush I saw. Always in my head, because I'd heard the song, in my head, this song live was him and Craddock, both electric guitars, kind of facing off at each other almost in a kind of, a guitar battle kind of thing. And actually it wasn't that at all. It was Paul on acoustic guitar, Steve Craddock on electric, obviously. But it's interesting because the song started out that way then. So it was built off the acoustic and then we're building up and building up. I want to settle an argument on this song, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So a lot of people have heard this song. If you look at the credits of it, we've got Paul Weller, and it says electric guitars as one of the instruments he plays, right? We've got Steve Craddock electric guitars. We've got Josh McClory electric guitars. Who's the one in the opening? So the opening one, who's that? McClory, Craddock, Chopper, or Paul Weller?
Place your bets.
I thought Josh McClory, only because Craddock could do it, but why would Josh be there? And it sounds very kind of angular in a way, almost like Jam, old school Jam kind of sounding, right? And I thought maybe that's a Josh Stripes, Josh McClory type thing.
Well, it isn't.
Oh, shit. Is it Craddock?
Pay up. It's Craddock, yeah. Steve Craddock, yeah.
It sounds almost like Rickenbacker. Do you know what the guitar is?
No, I can't remember the time. Sometimes I can't even see him when he's doing it because he'll be just round the corner in the live room and I can only see so much of the live room. So he's probably parked off facing Paul, so they're opposite ends of the room.
And Josh wouldn't have been here at this point recording with them?
No.
So this was Steve and Paul against each other then, right?
Yeah, Josh was definitely later on anyway, because this was the end of the album, and I think this track just happened so quickly. Josh did loads of overdubs, loads of different sounds and parts on this. But initially, it's Steve playing the electric and Paul on acoustic.
Sorry, Steve, I feel bad now.
Yeah, and it was just because it's an acoustic song, essentially, even though it's got electric guitar on it. It's driven by the acoustic, and we didn't really want to lose that. So Steve sets it up nicely, but it's not a big guitar sound. It's a small guitar sound. It sounds like it's going through a little amp. So it's not going to overtake, or I don't know, should we say diminish Paul's acoustic? So everything was held like quite suspended, quite up in the song, quite high, small but thin. And it was going to be like, how are we going to get into this like massiveness? And we don't really. To me, it feels like this whole song was all set aside to be something a little bit harder.
I know what you're saying, yeah, because there's a bit of it where you could hear a version, like a Livewood version with that band at that point where it was like Yolanda and Paul attacking the guitar, Craddock attacking the guitar.
And there might be something else that, there's a little backwards things and little sound effects that he plays. It's really good. Which amazes me, that.
So this is all Steve. That's all Steve Craddock.
Yeah, he's really, he comes up with these ideas very quickly, and Paul plays in this. So when we're going, Paul will do just that.
So what would he have sent Bobby Gillespie? Because Bobby wrote the lyrics.
When we did this, I think I remember this being fairly quick. So it might have been a case of just send this rough version that we've done, or this early version, off to him, and then we'll carry on doing a few overdubs, and then he'll do the vocal. But actually, no, vocally, it was done very quickly.
Okay.
Very quickly. I can tell you that only because we don't have stacks of old vocals in this one at all. Usually we'll get like a take and then another take, then another take, and then another session may happen, and then we'll do more. This one, it looked like it was all done pretty much in one hit.
That's mad though, isn't it? Like the fact you can create a song this good that quickly.
Yeah, so if something happens quickly enough, it usually means everything's natural. It's not forced in any sense. Right, so
Josh.
Moving on to guitars. Yeah, Josh guitars now. Oh, of course, the guitar solo. Let's play it against the bass. Beautiful the way he's worked that in, and then at the very end you hear Josh, this angular guitar. It's angry.
How good is that?
It's proper attitude. I remember when he was playing it, it's like, really hard in the room as well, next to the amp, and the amp's like really loud, and but it was just that last moment. You think, wow.
It's days like that. That's why you come to work, right?
Those
recording sessions like that. Oh my God, amazing.
Beautiful. What amazes me is there's little sections and there'll be little bits, like sort of the Hammond doesn't do a huge amount in this, but what it does is really effective, and it's really high, just quite piercing.
Let's talk about the backing singers then. So we've got Louise and Summerdo in the mix as well on this. The backing vocals are layered as well, not just the two. It sounds like an orchestra in a way, which just sounds wonderful. I said to Paul, to me, it's kind of like almost like, back in the day, this would have been your Carleen Anderson kind of, big, or even like recently a kind of revolution where you got P.P. Arnold and those
Jocelyn
kind of
Brown,
but they sound so good, and they're part of Jules's band. Obviously, I've seen them live; they're amazing, and they love their time in the studio here.
Because this is the last one, we thought, this would be great, and spend a bit of time. I think they were probably done in 5 or 10 minutes, literally that quick.
And I want to believe in something greater than me, and I'm humbled by the majesty of the sea and the stars and your love.
Oh almost want to give a round of applause for that.
Yeah.
I mean, that deserves it. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, no, it's just, I don't know. Uplifting, isn't it, really? If you.
Isn't that incredible? And again, I don't know if there's going to be a remix version of this. Sometimes Paul does that type of thing.
Yeah.
Those elements are the type of thing you naturally would pull out as a remixer, if you will.
I guess so, yeah.
Thought, right?
It depends which hat you got on. Some remixes are just go for the lead vocal, that's it. And they just tear everything else apart and just start from scratch. But if you give people something like that, it's hard to, not want to use it, I guess, as you say, but you don't know.
Let's talk about your favourite song on the album, assuming it still is, which is Burnout, which is the album closer. You've not got sick of this one yet. It's still a favourite, right?
I love it. It's, I know it's not like an uplifting song in any sense, but I just think it's beautiful.
It is an incredible, incredible song and a great way to end the album, but it's bleak in parts, but it kind of is uplifting towards the end. This soundscape, again, is pretty much all Paul, really, when you look at it. It's, it's him on slide, it's him on acoustic piano, Celeste, Mellotron. We've got some Hammond from Tom Heel on this, bass from Andy Crofts actually on this, because the very initial creation of this song was just a bit of jamming in the studio.
It just happened so quickly, so quick. Half a take, a practice take. Half a practice take, the band learned, Paul just going through the chords, and then they thought, well, let's just do something on it, maybe jam it out a bit, but Paul had this sort of structure in mind. So that was about, 6 minutes, 7 minutes long, that whole thing that they did, and the first half of it was amazing. And so we just took whatever they did then live, rearranged it, and Paul did a couple of overdubs, I can't remember exactly how many, but not many at all. It was just beautiful as it was, with a little bit of extra electric and some of those other things that he played on top later on. We didn't need much. We just didn't need much.
That doesn't seem to me, from my understanding of music and the creation of albums and singles and stuff, that's not common, whereby you'd go, okay, half a take of something, little run through, and then we're going, and then that's basically what becomes the track that then Erland writes the lyrics over.
Yeah, but you wouldn't think that. Well, you wouldn't think it, but maybe sometimes using the studio as a tool, as an arranging tool is when you're given something that's performed so well, initially you've got so much, you've got more than enough there, but just a few edits turns it into a complete track. But that's in minutes, so after a few hours, probably that was enough to get everything that we needed initially. I can't remember if it was a week or a month later, but we came back to this song in early January of 2021, whenever the Cosmic Fringes video was filmed.
Yeah, it would have been because the album was out May 21, wasn't it? Yeah.
So they were doing that, and then I remember whilst they were filming that upstairs in London, we had a little room downstairs where we could sort of safely hide from COVID. Yeah, and Paul came down and we just had a chat about it. He said he had an idea, so I thought, let's just edit what we've got. And there's bound to be enough there. And like the next day, I think it was, we went back to the barn and just put this thing together. Absolutely amazing. And he was playing live piano. So it was Paul playing the piano, no singing or anything at this point. I don't think so. I think it was just piano, live drums, Crofty on bass, and of course Jacko on sax on this one. Tom and Hammond, of course, Tom and Hammond.
So Erland Cooper writes the lyrics for this as well, which are just brilliant. I mean, the vocal from Paul on this is terrific. But we should mention it. So Erland's actually on backing vocals. And we should mention Erland because he's such a talent, but he's actually on the song as well. Did he come here? Was this sent over?
Yeah, no. We recorded him between him and Paul, they were able to put down the finish of vocals. Erland's got such a beautiful voice, such a contrasting voice, His is sort of delicate and just seems to cry out. And on this one, I think it seems to work particularly well. See the subject matter and being a post. Everybody at the time of COVID was writing about COVID and, and Paul, I think, wanted something. He didn't want to do that when he was doing Fat Pop. But I think this was a chance to maybe do that, like crying out for help or however you want to describe it. It's not painful, but it's hard. But I find that's beautiful. Some of the best music comes from that and some of the best lyrics come from that pain. But yeah, let's put a little bit of Paul and Erland together so you can hear what they're doing.
You and I will go away nowhere.
And that kind of phasing that you've got there, that reverb.
The phasing reverb, yeah.
That's done in post, right?
Yeah. It's just a sort of an idea. I think Paul sort of had this idea to just to enhance it, embellish it a little bit more, because there's not a huge amount on here. You know, the basic track of the song is the live take. So vocally speaking, sonically, you've got loads of space. You do all sorts of stuff, and it's so slow that it makes sense. But why not just have these random sounds, or not even random, just uplifting and moving. So there's movement in the sound.
We also get strings, and there's this beautiful section at the end with the strings. And I said to Paul, the one thing I love, like this song kind of just fades to nothing beautifully at the end with these kind of strings just ringing out.
Yeah, Hannah's done an amazing job on this arrangement. I think she wanted to make it... I've never heard of the idea of when somebody's playing a note, say, on a cello, a low note, and then going up. I thought you would just glide through the scale up to the next octave up, or even two, or from there. And Hannah insisted, no, the notes had to be all played individually. So you hear there's just this cluster of rising notes, and everybody playing it, all the cellos and the violas doing it. And it's like this. It's a huge sound. That's what you get from just them all playing in, together at the same time. But by the time you sort of get to the end of the song, it does make sense. When you have to listen to everything together, it's almost chaotic, but it's so dense and heavy. Yeah, this is from the first part of the coda. This one doesn't have any violins on it. I think Paul said to me ages ago about maybe they could do a little bit of a Beatles-esque sort of sound. So I thought, well, it's got to be cellos then. There's bass trombones in it, and they're just beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
These arrangements are so good, and the sound of that orchestra is so good that actually, without wishing to give you more work, Charles, there's a spin-off EP here of those. Just that on its own is just beautiful. And I know they're not kind of full tracks in that sense.
No, you'd have to redo all of that to make it, say, a completely orchestral arrangement. Otherwise you've got like 2-minute gap here and then a minute gap there. But just that part at the end, the way Hannah's written it, just to build and build and build, is mesmerizing. And in a way, originally the song was supposed to fade. So she was supposed to build this song and then it just fades whilst it's building. But I gave her the whole thing anyway, and she wrote an arrangement for the whole thing. And then when we got back to the studio after Abbey Road, I just thought, oh, this is amazing. Whatever she's done is absolutely amazing. Put down a mix of it so Paul could have a listen. And then later on, I was hoping that Paul would just never say, fade it, fade it, fade it. And I think he just said, no, let's just keep the whole thing right till the very end. If you listen very carefully at the end, there's a lovely little thing that Paul says, but I'm not going to tell you just now. You'll have to listen and find it for yourself.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Wow.
It still gives me goosebumps.
Hey, look, this has been such an absolute joy.
What a pleasure.
I mean, to just be here in the studio to talk about the album was the idea, but we've kind of dissected some of these songs, a lot of these songs, and just hearing little bits so that the contributors, we can hear more of them and their story, which ties in beautifully. I have to ask you very quickly about the extras. So what we've also got is a bunch of tracks: Wheel of Fortune, In a Silent World, Now Is Here, Gotta Get On, That's What She Said, which is on the Japan release.
Yeah.
How do you guys decide what goes? Is this a solely Paul thing? What goes on the main album versus what's going to be the extras, if you like?
I've got to say, this album, I can't speak for our previous albums. Paul's definitely like, no, I want this. Maybe not from day one, but as the track listing formed, as we reduced the songs, as Paul reduced the songs on the main album itself, it just seemed like natural. Some of these songs they're lovely songs. I really like Gotta Get On. But
I
Paul's
that's
like,
an
no, I don't.
absolute banger.
Yeah. So I don't think that should be on the album. So, well, he has his reasons, but what helps is that if you did have a double album, it's quite hard work. 22 Dreams is an amazing collection of songs, an amazing album, rather. It's not just a collection of songs. There is some sort of method to the order and that. But with this, I can't tell you. I have no idea why Paul created this particular order, but I'm pretty sure something, again, it's to do with side 1 and side 2.
Yeah.
That split between the two, that important split, and actually finishing on Burnout. I'm so glad he put that on the album. He must have thought naturally that is the end of the album.
The thing is, guys, there's a couple of things I want to ask you before we wrap up. There's still stuff in the can. So from these sessions as well, there's other stuff that isn't yet out in the world. I'm not going to tell you what they are. Guys, you're going to have to wait for this, all right? This is not my story to tell or reveal, but there's other stuff that's recording this. But Paul did talk about the fact, he did say to me on the podcast before episode 180 that this year was all about getting everything from those sessions out into the world. So what we do know is it's all going to be released this year, and then it's a kind of clean slate, right?
Yeah. There's more to come.
He did also say the next thing was a covers album. Have we started anything yet? Can you tell us anything? He's shaking.
No,
you just can't say.
We haven't done any recording or anything for it. This is a concept in Paul's head that's probably still forming.
Okay. Well, what I did find from doing the story of 66, from talking to everybody, as many people as I could who are involved in this album, it would be a lot easier if I was here for the journey as we go through it, Charles. I'm just going to flow that out now, right? Doing this once the album's been done is very time consuming. I'm just putting that out there, right?
Paul, he's already up. Paul, where are you?
I want to also talk about 2 other projects, because I think the thing is, whilst Paul's creating this music and he's at home writing the lyrics and whatever, you're also beavering away here at Black Barn. And what we've also had, it's amazing to kind of get your name on these albums, your engineering and producing stuff. Lucy Rose, I've got to mention this album.
Yeah.
This Ain't the Way You Go Out, which has just been released in the past couple of months. It's an incredible piece of work, which you were creating here with her in Black Barn.
Yeah. Originally came here just to do some demos. That's good. Great. Live band, her sitting at the piano and singing, and drums, bass. Fine. But it felt great what she did. And I've got a feeling with Lucy, it's like, no, it's got to be bigger than that. And of course, she overdubbed the tracks more so in other places with other people. But the initial, I suppose when I played it to Paul, some of the tracks to Paul, he just felt that she's got it in her to see this through without needing a producer, or at least without needing to overcook the songs. It's a beautiful album, but the fact that they were really just based on demos was actually, no, they're not demos. Those were the real recordings. They were the master recordings because she played them so well. The whole band, very natural.
I think the other thing with that album, once you know the full story, her story of her back and post-pregnancy and all that, those there's a different meaning to those songs, and we will take our own meaning. So in the title track, you take your own meaning from that, certainly, as you listen to things. But once you know her story as well, that kind of album has a fuller picture to it too.
Yeah, definitely. It was one hell of a journey for her, when having the baby, Otis, and then everything that happened after that. And then really just deciding I need to get back into this music. I really need to do it, before too much time, before fans just go, where has she gone?
It's a remarkable piece of work. And I have to say, Lucy's such an amazing talent. So it's lovely hearing that. I've seen pictures on social media. Stone Foundation have been down here recently recording their new material as well. And again, it's not my story to tell. It's the 2 Neil's story to tell, really.
Yeah.
They love this place, don't they?
Yeah, it's easy for them because they know everything that they need is here. They want to work quickly as well. This album was recorded, I don't know, a few days. We did almost everything within the week anyway. They're really happy the way that they do stuff. Such good, solid musicians, but it's all about trying to get that live take. Or if it isn't completely live, they will do their best to play over something very basic and turn it into something that feels like it's live. And then it's the quest of finding who else is going to play or sing on the album. And this one, it's surprising, actually, who they get. She'll leave it there.
Everybody said the same thing. We've had no spoilers at all, and rightly so. Hey, Charles, this has been an absolute joy. Thank you so much. And Marco, cheers, man. Thank you as well for hosting us here at Black Barn. What an absolute joy. And congratulations again on this album, because as it goes out into the world, you must feel very proud of the work as well. This is something you've kind of, blood, sweat and tears and all that.
I'm excited, really excited to hope, if anything, it's not really so much about the reviews. It's probably to do with how quickly this lands. Well, this is going to land shortly, right? So by the time you hear this, I'm right in saying it's out, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that immediate effect afterwards is like, what's going to happen after those few days? How many people are going to be saying this and that? I love all of that stuff. Personal reviews, not necessarily just a journalist saying it. Although I will say some journalists, I think they get it. They do get it. They understand where Paul's coming from.
Well, the reviews, we've had 5-star, 4 stars reviews, like massive, amazing reviews already for this album.
No, I'm just excited anyway for the period afterwards when everybody's like first talking about it, and some of these tracks may get played. Some people might just start, I don't know, spreading the word on social media, but just wanting to find people's reactions, because it seems like forever that we've been talking about it, and then what? Yeah. Come on, listeners. Come on, people. Sorry, people. Enjoy it. I hope they do. I really do, because I love this journey. Bless Paul. He's been amazing. It's been fascinating just to be able to get to this point now and hold it for so long without give too much away.
Thank you so much once again, man.
No, you're welcome. Thank you.
My thanks once again to Charles Rees for spending a few hours with me at Black Barn Studio, taking us through this incredible album, 66. What a magical episode, and what an incredible experience that was. My thanks to everybody involved in the creation of this podcast series, all of my guests. Special thanks to Charles, to Paul's manager, Claire Moon. Cheers, Mooney, much appreciated. And of course, to the man himself, Paul Weller. Who would have thought when I came up with this daft little desperately seeking Paul idea a few years back that here we'd be telling the story of 66, the latest album, Paul Weller's 17th solo studio album, in an amazing podcast series. A couple of final thank yous as well. My thanks go to my friend Keely Shaw for all of the amazing art designs for this new series. An absolute legend. Thank you so much for making this look so incredible. And thanks also to my amazing, brilliant, yes, let's be honest, long-suffering wife, Kate, and my 2 boys, Henry and Freddie. I hope this journey makes them as proud as seeing their daddy looking bloody awful in high definition on the evening news after 2 weeks of Christmas eating. That's a wrap. The story of 66. Thank you so much for your company. If you've enjoyed any element of this, please do spread the word on social media. Grab yourself a virtual coffee in my online store. It's paulwellerfanpodcast.com. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you next time.